Welcome back. Remember what I said before. Programs are simply assigning memory, for example, assigning a value to a variable, and then running a function for the program to do something with those variables. That's all programs are. And without functions, our programs wouldn't do anything. This is an important concept in all programming languages. And as you'll see in future videos, functions give us some amazing powers in JavaScript. So let's define functions and some of the common terms around them. We already touched on the fact that we have function expressions and function declarations. A function declaration is something that starts with the function keyword. And let's just create a function, India. And this function will simply console.log warm, because it's pretty warm in India. A function expression, on the other hand, doesn't start with the function keyword. Instead, can look like this. Let's say variable Canada, and that's going to equal function. And inside of this function, it's console.log, and Canada is very cold. At least where I'm filming right now, it's extremely cold. And that's a function expression. And we've learned about this and how function declarations get hoisted, function expressions don't. I could also write this with an arrow function and do something like this if I wanted to. It'll have the same effect. Now, with our functions, we can call them, right? And the terms here sometimes vary, but you can have function, let's comment this out. We can have function invocation, calling a function, or you can even have execution of a function. And what that means is we're telling our JavaScript engine to, hey, run our function. We've put these functions in memory, or at least we've assigned a variable, and now we're ready to do something with our program. So we do a function invocation by simply running the function with curly brackets. And as soon as the JavaScript engine sees this, it says, all right, what do? We create an execution context. Same with India. Going like this, I invoke a function, I call the function, I execute the function. If I click run, it's working. And this is pretty basic, nothing new, right? I wanted to go over the terms just so we're clear for the next few videos when I use these terms. And to review, when it comes to the Canada function, well, this function is defined at runtime. When we actually run the function, or call the function, or execute the function, or evoke the function, that's when we define what this function does. Versus India, where this function gets defined at parse time. That is when the compiler initially looks at the code and starts hoisting and allocating memory. Now, these functions, when they're executed, have another piece to them. Let's have a look. When a function is invoked, well, we create a new execution context on top of our global execution context, and we get a few things. We get the this keyword, which we've already talked about, and we'll define it a little bit better later on in the videos as well. But unlike the global execution context that gave us a global object that equals to this, instead, with a function invocation, we get something called arguments. And that's another keyword in JavaScript. Let's have a look at this arguments keyword. If I scroll down here, and let's start off with a new function. This function is going to be called Mary, and it's a function that marries two people, person 1 and person 2. It has parameters, and inside of this function, we'll just simply console.log arguments, which, according to what I just said, we should have access to, because when we invoke this function, we'll get passed an arguments object. And just for fun, let's also return from this function a template string that will say person1 is now married to person2. How cute is that? All right. Now, from here, if I run the marry function with, let's say, marrying Tim and Tina, if I run this, I get Tim is now married to Tina. That's great. But look at that. We get something from this console log arguments. Let's write arguments in here just so we can be a little bit more clear as to what's happening. And if I run this, we see that this arguments keyword gives us an object with the first index being Tim and the second index, or in this case, key, being Tina. So we get that special object. Very interesting. Now, if what I told you is correct, that means we don't really get arguments in the global object, do we? If I run this, I'll get an error. Arguments is not defined because, well, arguments is only available to us when we create a new execution context with a function. All right, so we got the arguments object. But you might remember something from our previous videos. Remember this? We talked about how to help the JavaScript engine optimize our code. And I told you not to use arguments. And I kind of gave you a vague answer as to why that is. Well, in the next video, let's have a look at why that is.